Ontario has launched public consultations across the province as it looks to revamp its long-term energy plan. And a place that's often mentioned as a point of comparison is Germany, which in sharp contrast to Ontario has been decommissioning its nuclear fleet. Joining us now for a look at the choices Germany has made, here's Craig Morris. He is Senior Fellow at the Institute for Advanced Sustainability Studies in Potsdam, Germany, and co-author of Energy Democracy, a cover of which you see right now. Craig, it's good to meet you. Thanks for coming in tonight.
Thanks for having me here.
Germany, as we suggested, is getting rid of nukes. Why did they make that decision?
Well, the decision's actually been a long time in coming. And one of the things that we try to stress in the book is that it was a grassroots movement, and it actually predates concern about climate change and, or public concern about climate change and awareness of radioactivity. And so this started off as a protest against a single nuclear reactor, but also against a company that was going to manufacture lead. They were going to produce lead. And so this rural farming community saw both the reactor coming in and this industry, and they thought both of this is going to be dirty. And it was the reaction that we get now about fracking in the States. A little bit, maybe also the reaction we're getting against pipelines like the Dakota pipeline in the States, where people are saying, we're going to run the risk, you're going to make the profits, we think this is unfair. So this started off a little bit as a sort of civil rights movement, and that's why the book is called Energy Democracy and not something technical.
I want to pick up on that word dirty, because there's a great debate, of course, about how dirty nuclear is versus renewables, et cetera. We had a discussion on this program not too long ago about the fact that we are going in this province of Ontario in completely the opposite direction. We are betting big on nuclear, about to spend nearly $13 billion retrofitting and refurbishing our nuclear build. There's a consultant from Ottawa named Steve Applin who was on the program. He brought Germany into the discussion. Have a look at the monitor. I want to play his clip and then we'll chat, okay? Let's roll it, please, Sheldon. If you're the government, what's the key piece of information you need to know to help you make the right decision?
How much does it cost and how much carbon comes per unit of energy? It's very, very simple. And if you look at the history and if you look at reality and our current situation, we've got a low cost, we've hooked most of our supply to a low cost provider that produces no carbon. Other jurisdictions have not done this. Jurisdictions like Germany, they've got expensive, dirty power.
True or false?
Well, yes and no. It depends on, there are different prices. So we have very high retail prices. We're looking at something like upwards of nearly 30 euro cents. So that's going to be, I guess, 35 cents in Canada.
35 Canadian cents per kilowatt hour?
Per kilowatt hour.
Okay, that's 3 times higher, 4 times higher than what we pay for nuclear power.
Wait a minute, but you need to compare your retail rate to that, okay? So what do households pay? All right, so probably it's closer to 15 cents, I'm going to guess.
Okay.
So it's still double, though. But so you've got an argument there. The thing is that historically, German retail consumers have cross-subsidized industry. So our industry prices are actually at around 3 or 4 cents. Okay, so big industry that, you know, they consume a lot of electricity, they're doing very well, and everyone points to these high retail prices and says, oh, you know, the businesses must be running scared over there. Actually, we've seen the opposite. We've seen steel companies, we've seen aluminum companies relocating to Germany because other countries are looking at 5 or 6 cents, and Germany has actually gone in the direction of 3 or 4.
But he seems to be suggesting, Steve Applin does, that Germany is fueled by dirty energy. Is it?
Well, Germany has about 45% coal power, okay? Now, the reason they have coal power is because they have coal. If we had, in Germany, if we had a lot of natural gas like the Netherlands or Norway, or if we had hydropower like Norway or Quebec.
Or like us.
Or like you, we would be using that instead. So I think sometimes the nuclear camp likes to say, see, if you go renewables, you end up with something dirty to back it up. Germany has something dirty to back it up because it has something dirty and it's cheap. Okay, so it's the coal.
You know what? Let's do this right now. We want to do a comparison between how we make our electricity in Ontario and how they do it in Germany. And here's the chart that shows it. Let's start on the left-hand side, and you can see we are overwhelmingly reliant on nuclear power for as much as 60% of our electricity. You see the numbers there for natural gas and hydro and wind, and what you don't see, of course, in the province of Ontario anymore is coal. We've shut down all the coal-fired generating stations in this province. Germany, by contrast, not as big a bet on nuclear and much more, I guess, what's the word, balanced, would you say, in terms of its dependence on coal, renewables, and other things as well. Do you think, as you look at that chart, and given how reliant the province of Ontario is on nuclear-based power, could we replace that much with renewables?
So Germany started off with 30% nuclear power just a few years back, so 2010, right? We had the big nuclear phase out after Fukushima. And we started off at about 30%, and that was the historic level going all the way back to the 1990s. So it's now gone down to 14. But in that time frame, renewables just from 2000 until today have gone from 6% of power supply to 35% right now. That's an increase of 29 percentage points.
Over what period of time?
That's just in the past 16 years.
16 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
And in fact, so nuclear has also gone down 16 percentage points. During that time frame, new renewables have been added to more than fill that gap. So it would probably take you a number of years to do this.
Sounds like it'd take 4 decades to do it.
No. It would take you, just based on the German example, if we're able to increase at a level of, let's say, 5 percentage points per year, it would take you 12 years.
12 years to get off nuclear entirely.
If that's what you want, is just nuclear, yes.
If we, I really want to make sure I understand this. If we wanted to get rid of the 60% of the electricity generation in this province that is done by nuclear, and replace that with renewables, we could do that in how many years? A dozen years?
You could do it faster if you want. I mean, look at the potential that this province has. You've got all this space for wind turbines. You've got at least the solar conditions of Germany, okay? You've got, if you start working with communities, you've got biomass potential that will also strengthen farming communities and rural communities. So there's a lot of potential there. I mean, I'm not an expert on what Ontario can do,
Sure.
but I would say, just based on the German example, you could probably do this in 12 years, and if you wanted to have a concerted effort, if you needed to, and your focus was on developing rural communities, then you could probably do it even faster.
I'm going to get to that in a second because that's an interesting angle. But before we do that, let's bring up this next graphic if we could, Sheldon. And this is to make a comparison between the size of the country of Germany and the province of Ontario. And you can see that the province is about twice as big as the entire country of Germany. But of course, our population is much, much smaller. They're at 80 million and we're only at 13 million, creeping up on 14 million here in the province. Why would we think that whatever's happening in Germany or whatever lessons the German example sets might be applicable for a place that is so much less densely populated than Germany?
Well, what I actually like to tell people is that Germany is not a very good location for either solar or wind, and that's the good news. If Germany can move this fast, practically everyone else can move faster because most countries have better wind potential, better solar potential than Germany does. It's pretty weak even within a European comparison. And again, I haven't taken a look at the potential in Ontario, but you must have some experts who can chime in on that.
And frequently do on this program.
And frequently do. Good to hear that.
But what about the price? I mean, one of the things we're hearing right now is that nuclear is, relatively speaking, still a cheap way to generate electricity once the plant is, of course, built. Whereas renewables, you're talking about twice or 3 times or 4 times more expensive when compared by kilowatt hour of electricity generation. Well, and right now they're going through a crisis in this province, right? You know, with the cost of electricity. A lot of people complaining it's way too high as it is.
Okay. Well, I mean, what you really have to do is make a distinction between new builds and existing stuff, okay? So if you're talking about what do we want to add, I think the argument is over and wind and solar are going to win, just globally. And I'm sure that even if Ontario doesn't have the best solar conditions, down the road, solar is going to be very, very competitive. Also, keep in mind that solar can be installed on all kinds of buildings, and then you're actually comparing not the generation costs from a particular power plant, you're comparing solar to what the retail rate is from the power socket, right?
Let's do another comparison here if we can. We have had in this province a devil of a time trying to, let me put it this way. The government has had a devil of a time trying to convince people in the rural parts of the province to put up wind turbines. You know, there's been a lot of community opposition to that. There are a lot there, but it's been a fight every step of the way. Did that experience happen in Germany as well?
Well, it's interesting the way you pose the question, because you say the government has been having a hard time getting people to accept this. What happened in Germany was the people pushed for this to happen, and they actually then got the law that allowed them to run into the market and start becoming active. And the funny thing is, I got a visit in 2008 in Freiburg from a gentleman named Smitherman. He came to Freiburg, Germany on a fact-finding mission, and we sat with the mayor of Freiburg and discussed why a municipality, why a mayor would be in favor of an energy transition and especially small distributed renewables. And Mr. Smitherman came back from that trip, and I suppose it wasn't just our meeting, but he came back very convinced, and he passed a law here, the Green Energy Act. And it was very much based on the German model. And I think what a lot of us, and I miss this too, what a lot of us thought was if we just take the German law and pass it everywhere, we will have community energy and people will love it and they'll build all this stuff themselves. And what we see from Ontario to Spain to Italy and other places is it was the other way around. The Germans asked for this and got the law and then ran with it, but simply putting the law somewhere wasn't enough. The people of Ontario were not waiting for this to happen, and so it's taken a while for them to pick up the baton. And what we need to do in this province then is communicate to everyone that you have the right to say no to a wind turbine if you want, but then let's talk about what you want instead.
Well, you don't, though. That's the thing.
Exactly.
In the province of Ontario, you don't have that. Municipalities do not have a veto. They have the right to consultation, but they don't have a right to veto if the province wants to put a wind turbine in their backyard.
And this isn't acceptable. And that's what I'm saying. We have to give people actual rights, and that's why our book's called Energy Democracy. And again, I'm not saying just that people need to be able to build this. I think people should be able to say no. And the reason I believe this is that based on the German experience, just starting to have this discussion, you know, you might get 80% of communities in Ontario saying no to wind turbines, but then you'll get 20% saying yes. And 5 years later, we're going to review this, and all of those communities that said no are going to look at the 20 that said yes, the 20% that actually built something, and they're going to say, you know what? They're making good money, the jobs are happening locally, their communities are stronger, and all those concerns that we had about you can see the things and, I don't know, they're loud or whatever, that's not really happening.
I got to tell you, the Green Energy Act is box office poison in this province right now. What do you do about it? I mean, this is one of the difficulties in your efforts to sort of convince people to make this kind of transition, is that there's a great deal of opposition and antipathy to this approach right now.
Yeah, and I would just say we need to engage more with the public, and we need to communicate to them that this is an opportunity, but that if they want, it's not enough for them just to say yes and then the utility comes in and builds. What we really want is for them to run with this themselves. They should be the drivers, and they should decide that we want maybe 3 turbines here and not 50 over here, but you will eventually get a momentum, you know, after everyone is happy with the 3 turbines, and then the farmers come in and say, you know what, we've got a lot of bio waste. You could be making biogas, and then you have heat and electricity that's renewable. We're recovering waste for that. To use the waste, we need to build district heat networks. This is going to really bring the community together, and you'll start a discussion about energy, and that will have its own momentum. And then I think people are going to make the right decisions.
Energy Democracy is the name of the book, and we're grateful that you spared some time for us at TVO tonight to share your views on this. That's Craig Morris. Thanks, Craig.
Okay, thanks.
Help TVO create a better world through the power of learning. Visit TVO.org and make a tax-deductible donation today.